Aloha! It is time for more profound moments during amazing trips taken by interesting people. Today, one of my guests spent a long time planning to walk across the US. He had to budget it, he had to find a route. There was a lot of work going into that trip. And then 2 weeks before he took his first step, he met someone. And the next thing you know, he would be taking those 8 million steps with a companion. I'd like to introduce today Keith and Reina Edwards. And let me start with Keith, but Reina, I want you to answer this question after him. What the heck were you thinking?
Yeah, we get asked that a lot. Yeah, thanks for having us on the show, John. Yeah, growing up, my uncle actually rode his motorcycle across the country, and I always thought that was really cool. And I drove across country a few times and this and that. And, I actually saw that one guy actually walked it, and it got in my head, and I thought that was really cool, and maybe one day I could do it. And over the years, I slowly tried to plan my life to possibly do it, but I couldn't find anybody that wanted to do it with me. Obviously, it's kind of hard to find. And then one day I met Reina, and I brought it up to her we had a few bottles of wine and brought it up, and she said, we should do that. And a couple weeks after that, we went for it.
Now, Reina, is it true that you and Keith had only met 2 weeks before you started a trip to spend 200 nights together walking these 8 million plus steps?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, we didn't really think of it that way when we first started. We were just like, yeah, let's just go for this adventure. And I guess I didn't put too much weight on it. Like, oh, it's going to be like 208 days. So maybe that lightness to it made it easier to go into.
We didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into.
Not at all.
So obviously you did a lot of planning, and Keith, the first change you make, it's not a solo trip. You're doing it as a couple now. What were some other changes that probably hit you immediately? Once you got on the road, I bet most everything was a little different than you thought it would be.
Yeah. The hardest thing was probably finding a place to sleep every night that was safe. We're walking 20 to 25 miles a day. Sun starts going down. Okay, where are we going to safely set up our tent? Most nights we slept in a tent on the side of the road. I'd say about once a week or so, we'd get a hotel, take showers, do our laundry, do some food shopping, things like that. But yeah, definitely finding a place to sleep. That was a very difficult thing. Dealing with the mechanical repairs, the cart breaking down, things like that. Having enough shoulder on the side of the road to, be big enough for us to walk on. A lot of times the shoulder won't be there. I didn't even really think about that when I was planning this. Like, oh, there's got to be a certain amount of space for us to fit. A lot of times roads get real narrow and there's not enough room, which is a huge thing, a daily thing we had to deal with, because we have this cart that we pushed. We didn't have backpacks. We had a cart that we named Larry, and it held our tent, our water, our food, a solar panel that charged our cell phones. So we always had to deal with that cart and that space.
Right on. This show is focusing on profound moments during that trip. And as you and I talked a little bit, I think the first of the real profound moments for both of you, is when you crossed that first state line. Tell me what it meant to you when you finally got out of Florida.
Yeah. So the first 30 days we didn't take a break. We walked every single day. I'd say average between 15 to 25 miles a day. We were just so excited to be on the road, and it felt good, and we were making progress. And our families actually were betting against us. They didn't think that we were going to make it. It was kind of difficult to explain to our family and friends what we were doing. They're like, you guys are crazy. There's no way this is going to happen.
And they had a literal bet.
They literally bet against us that we weren't going to make it through Florida. So we had a mission. And once we made it through Florida, the panhandle of Florida, it was just a big confidence boost. And we knew
we could do it.
We knew we could finish it up. Like, we weren't 100%, but you make it that far, 30 days of walking, and you make it through a whole state. We felt like we could do it. And it was a big thing for us. Yeah.
That is a big deal. And then, okay, it's Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, there's thunderstorms, there's dust storms, there's coyotes, there's skunks. Then you get into Texas and someone shoots at you. What happened there?
So around, in Texas, so our camping every night would change depending on where we were at. In Texas, there's a lot of logging roads where these big trucks would go down, gather these logs. So it was kind of a nice area for us to tuck in at night and set up our tent. So we went down, we walked all day. We were near actually Lufkin, Texas. We remember that time. And went down this logging road, normal deal, set up the tent, cooked some stew, had a little fire, we made some food, went to sleep, and it was probably maybe a couple hundred yards off the main road, which we were out of town. We weren't really in the town anymore. We're pretty far out into the woods. And then we were dead asleep, and then all of a sudden we hear automatic rifle shooting right over our tent. We can hear it. We just jump up. I look at her and we're like, what's going on?
And then it goes off again.
Yeah. And then we're like, what? We're just trying to figure out, we're just sleeping, dead asleep. And then it goes off again. And then we're just freaking out. And I'm like, if I hear it one more time, I'm going to call the police. This is too much. And we could hear somebody walking right outside of our tent. We could hear footsteps. And it was definitely the scariest moment of my life. We were helpless in this little canvas tent. We don't have weapons like that. Obviously, we couldn't carry a gun on this type of trip because we're multiple state lines, isn't that? So we were just kind of helpless in there. And I ended up dialing 911. My phone was at like 1% and bad service. And the 911 operator is like, wow, you guys are really far out there. What are you guys doing way out there in the woods? I'm like, oh, well, we're walking across country and this and that. She's like, you're what? She's like, you're walking across country. I'm like, lady, this isn't the time for stories. I'm like, you need to send the police. There's somebody outside our tent with a gun. And then my phone, I lose service. My phone goes down. And I think we waited in a tent. We didn't hear anything for a little bit. We thought footsteps out there. And then eventually the police showed up. They came down the logging road, but they just shot their lights into the woods. And they wouldn't come in to get us. I finally got back. The responder called me and said, oh, you need to go out to the police. And so it was really scary. We had to get out of the tent. And we both actually at that time had brand new shoes. We just got brand new shoes the day before in the town, in the big city. And we get out of the tent. We couldn't really see where we were going. And there's this huge puddle. We stepped in the puddle and brand new shoes got soaking wet.
And when you're walking 25 miles a day, having wet shoes is not optimal.
And there's no break-in period. So long story short, the cops were there. We had to break down the cart. We threw it in the back of his SUV, and he just drove us like a couple miles down the road to get out of that area. We never found out who this guy was. He was hiding in the woods. And then he dropped us off at a church. We just slept on the church parking lot or in the stoop of the church. Yeah.
Wow. Well, for the most part, you met a lot of good people. When you needed help, you got it. This was an exception to a trip of realizing there's a heck of a lot more good than bad across this country or anywhere for that matter. One of your other profound lows was crossing the Mojave Desert, but this one, if I recall, you tell me, had a really 180-degree turnaround for the better. You went from the heat, dust, and exhaustion of the desert now a couple thousand miles after this incident in Texas, and you went truly from a hell to heaven experience. Can you tell me a little about that and who helped you out of that jam?
Yeah, that was the border, Parker, Arizona to 29 Palms. Is it 29 Palms? Yeah.
Yeah.
Parker to 29 Palms. It's near Joshua Tree. It's about a 120-mile stretch without services, which means no gas stations, no rest stops, no food or water, just straight desert, nothing. And we come across these stretches many times, not that long, but so we have to fill the cart up full of water. We got to be ready for 5-6 days of having everything on board with us to be able to survive. And we set off. We were out there for a few days. This was in August. It was hot. It was 100 and I think it was like 115 degrees.
And then it's even hotter because
yeah, the road temperature
Oh.
just radiate. It's you can't even breathe sometimes. It's brutal. So we tried a few different things. We tried walking at night. Ended up being a lot more dangerous because a lot of the truckers come out at night and they drive really fast on those desert roads. There's no shoulder, so it's just the road and then it's sand after that. So you have to walk in the highway.
Because it's impossible to push through.
Yeah, the sand is so soft for the cart. And our cart's so heavy because we have so much water on board. But,
yeah, it was like, what, 250 pounds or something?
We actually waited at a rest stop scale. Yeah, so that was a whole nother thing. The bearings and these tires, we went through so many tires.
They're so bowed out.
But anyways, so I lost track.
Oh, sorry.
There was a savior there, though. You're going through
Yes.
rock bottom, and
so we're walking during the day that day, and things started going for the worst. Our solar panel that charged our phones just quit working. I guess it got too hot, too much sun, and wouldn't charge our phones anymore. And so our phones were going dead. We were kind of running low on water. We had some left, but it was hot. Drinking hot water, you could drink tons of it. You never feel refreshed. It's pretty bad. And then there was a dust storm that came, and it just, blasted us with dust. And we're on the side of the road, and it was just a very big blow of the trip. And I remember looking at her, and there was a point when she didn't look like. I think you said that you didn't feel like you're sweating anymore.
Mm-hmm. I think I had heat stroke.
She was starting to get heat stroke, and I said, you know what? We want to be able to walk 100% of this, but we're not going to die over it. And that's when I said, this is kind of crazy. And then we made a post on our Instagram, which we documented our whole trip on our Facebook and Instagram. And this couple that was following us messaged us, and they said, hey, we can bring you some cold water and some snacks out. We live in Joshua Tree. So they came out and they looked at us and they're like, you guys look pretty rough. You guys, you still have a few more days out here. Like, this is, people aren't out here. You can notice there's not even animals living out here because it's so hot. There's nothing. So they said, well, we have an Airbnb that is in Joshua Tree, and you guys can stay there if you like. We're like, okay, we probably should do this. And we didn't know what it was going to be like. This is a nice young couple, and we made a judgment call. These seemed like they were our age. They had kids with them, and we're like, sure, let's get. This is too much. Let's get out of there. So they bring us back to this place. It was a house to ourselves, and it had a big in-ground saltwater pool, and we were able to stay there as long as we wanted. So we went from like the worst moment of our lives to swimming in this saltwater pool, having this big vacation rental, to ourselves, and it was pretty wild.
If there's a theme to everyone I get to talk to doing this once a week, is that there are a lot of good people out there, and people want to pitch in and help. And thank God they did for you two there. So you leave the desert, and you're not that far away from the Pacific Ocean, Atlantic to Pacific. The goal is almost met here. Next thing you know, we're on the edge of California, and you've got some friends there waiting for you. You've got some followers. You've got some family. And Keith, probably running through your head, now is the time. Is there anything you want to ask Reina at this point?
Yeah, so it was kind of a thing that we thought of. We had a lot of time on the road to think and talk, and we had a lot of people saying, oh, when are you guys going to get married, this and that, and we weren't ready for that yet. But we're like, oh, when we get to the Pacific Ocean, I'm gonna get down on one knee, because the news, KTLA News was there, all our friends and family. So like, when the news is interviewing us, I'm gonna get down on my one knee, and I'm gonna pretend like I'm proposing for marriage. And when I did, I got down on one knee, said, Reina, will you walk the whole west coast of this country with me? and a lot of people didn't exactly get it. Like my mom thought I was proposing.
She started like crying.
But really, I was just asking her to continue on this trip. We were ending there. We made our Atlantic to Pacific crossing. We did it. But we wanted to keep going. And I asked her if she wanted to walk from the Mexican border to the Canadian border, the whole West Coast, which was our trip after that.
And Reina, what was your response there?
Yes, of course. A million times, yes.
Right on. Awesome. Yeah. I am going to drop in a few slides, and I would love for the two of you to just say a couple words about each. First, there's the route that we've been talking about, but as I can now, either one of you, just give me a little time and place, a couple words about each of these.
Oh man, that was a long day.
Yeah, she's way behind me. So this might have been a time that we were arguing, because a lot of times if we were mad at each other for whatever reason, she would walk behind me like
20,
this.
30 feet.
Because that's all the separation we could get. But this was in Arizona. Yeah, just a really cool part of the country. Arizona was definitely one of our favorite states that we walked through, and this was just one of those really long stretches that we were walking on.
Nice. Here we go. We're out in the West again, and now somebody else has Larry to push this time.
Yeah, that was just a photo op.
Hey,
I'm just
I
kidding.
push Larry sometimes.
Well, no, to see that it's working both ways here. And let's
Yep,
see what we've
that's-
got. All right. When I saw this shot, Keith, it made me wonder. Like you said, quite a few mechanical issues. How many times were you somewhere on the side of a road fixing tires, gears?
This was a bad one, because we were in the middle of nowhere in Texas, and we ended up actually getting saved by some people that brought us to the next town to get some bearings, and they dropped us back off here. But yeah, we went through probably, I'd say 7 or 8. Those little front tires were brutal. I had to pick those up at Ace Hardware anytime I would find them. We would just burn the rubber through, and then the back tires we probably went through, let's say 5. And we tried run flat tires. We tried all kinds of things, and everybody was giving us some good advice. And
You even had to put Band-Aids on it.
I literally ran out of, we went through a patch, and I had to use our own personal Band-Aids with some glue to get us to the next town to get new tubes, and the bearings would break. And that's just a Schwin baby stroller. It's not meant to be pushed across the country.
I hope you went back to them and told them what it helped you accomplish. Okay, where are we here? Looks like you're hiding for something under a highway.
Yeah, that was
Hiding from the sun.
Yep, the sun was brutal to us, and we needed to take breaks throughout the day. And this was somewhere in probably New Mexico, Arizona, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no trees, there's no shade at all where we were. So for us, we would find these little bridges, and we'd make sure there's no rattlesnakes in there, and then we'd jump down there and have some water.
Right on. Here we go. A typical night on the side of a road. You remember where this location was?
That was near Dadle. I think that's in New Mexico as well. It's just a different, higher grounds. But we called it stealth camping, because we never wanted people to see us on the side of the road, cars driving by. So we had those camouflage netting that we would hide out and cover ourselves up.
You're still flying that American flag, though. That's
Always.
right on. Here we go. Continental Divide.
Yeah, that was near one of the cooler stops we stopped at.
High Town.
Yeah. High Town, New Mexico. It's this little tiny town, and they serve pies. That's it.
There's like 2 pie shops and like a gas station, and that's the town.
So the sweet treats of the road. I love this shot here. It feels like we're getting further and further west. The smiles are getting bigger.
Yep. This is.
This is like the day before we.
Yep. This is the Santa Ana River.
Mm-hmm.
This was our families were already in Huntington Beach. We were kind of trying to make our timing right here. We had this really nice walk path, which was super rare for us to have a walking path to be on. We were just stoked, because that's about 200 days, over 200 days in right there, and we were about to touch the Pacific Ocean, so we're pretty excited.
And there we go. Pacific behind you, and this was where the big question was popped.
Yep, there's the KTLA news there, and a bunch of our Instagram and Facebook followers there, and family, and we were just doing an interview.
So you made it. You made a pretty incredible trip. Then you added on the West Coast. In between, you threw a lap around the Big Island, which is where you live now.
Oh, we walked around Oahu.
Oahu.
Yeah.
So today you're living on the Big Island. Obviously, this worked because you're married. You have a beautiful daughter. Any other lessons learned about each other or about life in the course of everything you did? A lot of people talk about doing what you did, few do.
Yeah, I think it definitely, that first 200 days of us knowing each other really shaped our lives. You know, how we do everything, how we keep our house, how we, you know, raise our daughter.
Just how we work as a team in general.
Yeah, working as a team. We had to be a perfect team when we were on the road. Because if you're not organized, if you're not working together and being nice to each other and you know, this and that, it's difficult. So we learned a lot about each other, obviously, on that trip, and it definitely shaped our lives now, for sure.
Well, thank you so much for sharing it today. Congratulations on many things, of course, the trip itself, the building a life together, the daughter. This has been wonderful. I'm just going to do a quick plug for next week's shows. And then if you two just hang with me, we'll chat a little offline.
Sounds good. Thank you, John.
Thank you. So we've got 2 shows ahead next week. We are going to meet the most interesting man in travel. And then following that, we'll have a travel writer who will talk to us about how you have to be often 3 different places at the same time, how you live in the past, you write about the present, and you think about the next assignment in the future. We got those coming up next week. Thank you for tuning in this week. Aloha.